We don't always hear the break happen out loud. Sometimes it's a tone, a single sentence that lands wrong because it lands too accurately. Sienna Morales wasn't calling for sympathy, and she wasn't trying to prove anything. She just reached the point where being useful started to feel the same as being erased, and the timing made it sting in a way she couldn't ignore. She sells the kind of homes people save to vision boards and swear they'll buy someday. Her work has made her steady, capable, and quiet under pressure. What hurt wasn't the money she'd spent. What hurt was how easily her own family could treat her like an inconvenience, right up until they needed her to keep everything standing. This is where she begins. My phone rang while I was parked outside a listing in North Scottsdale, the kind with a gated drive and a front door you don't touch without wiping your hand first. I saw my dad's name and felt my stomach do that quick drop it always does, like my body was already bracing for the ask. "Hey," I answered. No greeting back, no warm-up, just his voice, flat and already irritated. "So Christmas," he started. "Harper wants it simple this year." I kept my eyes on the steering wheel. "Okay. She feels like you make people uncomfortable." A pause, like he expected me to laugh. "You walk into a room like you own it." My throat went tight. "Own it." "Yeah." He made it sound obvious. Like you're the one financing everything. It's embarrassing. I let the silence stretch long enough for the words to settle in my chest. "So, what are you asking me? We're not doing this right now." His voice sharpened. "We just want peace. Harper's stressed. Lucas is stressed. You've got a way of making things tense." I stared at the windshield, watching a landscaper drag a hose across a perfect lawn. "You're saying I'm not invited. I'm saying it's better if you sit this one out." Another pause. "This Christmas is about family, not whoever writes the checks." That line hit like a slap because it wasn't even new. It was just the first time he'd said it straight. My hand tightened around the phone. "Understood." He sounded relieved immediately, like a problem had been solved. "Good. I knew you'd be mature about it." I didn't correct him. I didn't argue. My voice came out calm in a way that surprised me. "Tell Lucas congratulations again. Don't be dramatic." He rushed the words, like he could outrun what he'd done. "We'll talk after the holidays." The call ended. I sat there with the screen dark, breathing through my nose, counting it down the way I do before I walk into a negotiation. 1, 2, 3. My hands weren't shaking. That part came later. A text popped up right after. "Lucas, hey. Harper's been overwhelmed. Don't take it personal." I read it twice, then set the phone face down on the passenger seat like it was something hot. We've watched this moment happen in a lot of families. That quiet click where someone realizes their presence was never the point, only their usefulness. I picked the phone back up and opened my notes app, not to vent, not to write a speech, just a list of what I was no longer going to do. Mortgage, property tax, insurance, holiday deposits, emergency transfers with the word temporary attached. Then I called my attorney's office and left a message that sounded almost boring. "Hi, this is Sienna Morales. I need to formalize a notice of financial disengagement, effective December 1st. I want it clean, documented, and non-negotiable. If any part of this feels familiar, it helps to put a boundary into words and say it out loud. Even once. I learned early how to adjust my tone in a room, not because anyone taught me directly, just because it was easier. When I was 16, I came home waving a scholarship letter like it was proof of something. Architecture summer program, out of state, half tuition covered. Dad was at the kitchen table with a calculator. Lucas was on the couch flipping channels. "Dad, look," I'd said, sliding the letter across. "They chose me, out of like 400 applicants." He skimmed the first page, nodded once. "Impressive. Mom would have hugged me." Dad just kept reading until he hit the cost breakdown. "This still runs close to $8,000, he pointed out. "It's half off." I reminded him, "I can work part-time. I can cover some of it." Lucas walked in from the driveway, bouncing a basketball off his hip. Coach says the travel team fee's due next week. Dad looked up at him immediately. How much? 5 grand. Plus uniforms. Dad leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. We can't do everything. I remember holding that letter, watching him do the math out loud. Basketball's an investment, he muttered. There's exposure, scholarships. I stood there longer than I should have. Architecture has scholarships too. He didn't look at me that time. Be practical. Sienna. That phrase stuck. Be practical. Which meant, don't push, don't make it hard. A week later, Lucas left for his tournament in brand new shoes. I folded my scholarship letter and put it in a drawer. It wasn't cruel. That's the thing. It was just consistent. Years later, when I closed my first big sale in Scottsdale, I called home. 7-figure deal? I'd told him, trying to keep it casual. That's good, Dad replied. Real good. Then, without much pause, actually, your mother and I were going to ask you something. There it was. Not congratulations. A transition. We're a little behind on the house. He continued. Temporary situation? I didn't hesitate. How much? About $18,000 to get current. I'll wire it tonight. He let out a breath that sounded like relief. Knew we could count on you. That became the rhythm. He'd clear his throat. I'd open my banking app. Lucas would call sometimes too. Hey, can you spot me a few thousand? Just until my next check clears. Send me the details. I got good at transferring money without attaching emotion to it. Practical, efficient. Somewhere along the way, I stopped waiting for anyone to notice the pattern. The call about the house came on a Tuesday afternoon. Dad didn't ease into it that time. There was no small talk about the Arizona heat or my latest listing. We're in trouble, he began, his voice thin. The bank sent a notice. It's a pre-foreclosure filing. Sienna. I stepped into my office and shut the door, the click of the lock echoing in the quiet room. A pre-foreclosure dad. How that house has been in the family for 30 years. The home equity line of credit, the HELOC, he admitted. The words sounding like a confession. It's caught up with us. We're behind $18,430 to bring the primary mortgage current. But the bank is calling the entire line of credit due. There is $92,000 outstanding. I closed my eyes, rubbing my temples. I knew exactly where that money went. The consulting business. You used the house as collateral for Lucas. It was supposed to be a bridge loan, Dad whispered. He just needed a start. But the interest rates reset, and now they're accelerating the debt. If we don't pay the arrears and restructure the credit line, they'll put a sign in the yard within 60 days. I stared at the framed escrow certificate on my wall. I was a broker. I knew the mechanics of ruin. People didn't lose houses to banks. They lost them to bad math and misplaced loyalty. I will wire the $18,430 tonight to stop the clock. I told him, my voice turning into my negotiator tone. But I am not just throwing money into a sinking ship. We are going to restructure this. What does that mean? It means we stop pretending this is a gift. I'm going to pay down the HELOC and consolidate the debt. In exchange, I need a recorded lien filed in Franklin County to secure my interest. I'm injecting nearly $110,000 of my own liquidity into that property. I need to be the primary equity holder. You're talking like a stranger, he muttered. Like a banker. I'm talking like the person saving your roof. I replied. 2 weeks later, I flew back to Columbus. We sat at the dining room table, the air heavy with the smell of stale coffee and resentment. I laid out the debt restructuring agreement. This document recorded a junior lien, I explained, pointing to the signature line. It reflects that I now hold 65% of the equitable interest in this home. You and Mom remain as life tenants. You keep possession, but I own the security. Dad adjusted his glasses, looking at the 75 pages of legal text. So you're the landlord now, I'm the safety net. I answered. I own the risk. You keep the memories. He signed. The pen scratched across the paper, a jagged sound in the silent house. As he pushed the folder back, he didn't look at me. This is temporary. Just until Lucas gets on his feet and we can buy you out. If that's what you want, I said, knowing the math said otherwise. Within 30 days, the arrears were satisfied and the HELOC was stabilized. The recorded lien was filed. When I flew back to Scottsdale, Dad called me from the porch. Feels good knowing it's handled. He said, "You did the right thing for the family." He never asked what it cost me to liquidate my personal savings. He just enjoyed the quiet again, unaware that the quiet was a luxury I had purchased for him. The house felt different after the paperwork. Not mine, just heavier. Payments started moving automatically after that. Mortgage, property tax, insurance. Every month, $2,780 cleared like clockwork. I stopped checking. I didn't need to. When Lucas got engaged to Harper, I wired $42,000 for their condo down payment without anyone having to ask directly. Lucas called that night. "You're unreal." He laughed into the phone. "Seriously? I don't know how I'd do this without you. You'd figure it out." "Yeah, but it's easier with you." That word stayed with me. Easier. The engagement dinner was at my parents' place. White tablecloth. Catering I'd paid for, though Dad told everyone it was a group effort. Harper was pretty in a careful way, polished, soft voice that sharpened when she forgot I was nearby. In the kitchen, I was rinsing champagne flutes when I heard her whisper, "She always needs to be the most impressive person in the room." Dad's voice, lower. "She thinks money makes her important." Harper gave a small laugh. "It's just exhausting." I stood there with water running over my hand longer than I meant to. My chest didn't tighten. That surprised me. It was more like something settled. Later, Lucas came up beside me near the hallway. "Hey." He nudged my shoulder lightly. "Thanks for everything. Harper's just overwhelmed." "I'm not upset. You know she doesn't mean it like that." "Like what?" He hesitated. "Like you're trying to control things." Control. I thought about the lien recorded in Franklin County, the mortgage current because I'd kept it that way, the holidays funded quietly. "I'm not controlling anything," I answered evenly. "I'm covering what needs covering." "Right," he said quickly. "Exactly. You always step up." Dad walked past us then, clapping Lucas on the back. "This is a good night. Let's not overcomplicate it." Overcomplicate. Another familiar word. I smiled for the photos, held the champagne, stood slightly off-center like I always did. Later that evening, while clearing plates, Harper touched my arm lightly. "I hope you know we appreciate you," she offered. I nodded. "I know." What I knew was different. The transfers continued. Mortgage, insurance, holiday deposits, $6,800 here. $21,000 for a roof repair, $92,000 toward the line of credit. No one asked for totals. They just assumed the rhythm would never change. I booked the trip the same night Dad told me to sit Christmas out. 6 nights in Jackson Hole, ski lodge, holiday dinner included, private lesson one morning, spa credit I probably wouldn't even use, $31,840. The confirmation email hit my inbox, and for a second, I just stared at it. Not because it was reckless. It wasn't. I'd spent more keeping their house current. This felt different. This was mine. The next morning, I called my attorney. "Mark." He picked up on the second ring. "You sound calm," he noted. "I am." That's usually when something's final. I need to formalize the financial disengagement. Effective December 1st, all voluntary transfers stop. He didn't react, just keyboard clicking in the background. Mortgage auto pay included? Yes. And the lien remains secured? Absolutely. We'll draft a notice of financial disengagement. 120-day cure period before enforcement. Clean language, no emotion. Good. There was a pause on his end. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." I hung up and opened my banking app. Mortgage auto pay disabled. Insurance removed. Property tax escrow contribution stopped. My hands didn't shake. That part surprised me. Lucas called that afternoon. Dad mentioned you're not coming. That's right. You don't have to make this a thing. I'm not. He exhaled softly. We'll miss you. I didn't answer right away. Have a good dinner. After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen for a minute, listening to the refrigerator hum. This wasn't revenge. It was paperwork. The snow in Jackson Hole was a steady, rhythmic fall that muted the world. I stood on the balcony of my suite with a mug of coffee, watching the steam vanish into the crisp Wyoming air. Below me, the village was waking up to a postcard-perfect Christmas. My phone buzzed against the railing, vibrating with a persistence that felt out of place in such a quiet morning. Dad. I let it ring for exactly 3 cycles before answering. Are you in Wyoming? His voice was thin, strained by an edge of disbelief. I am, I said, leaning against the frozen door frame. You posted a photo, he said. I could hear the unevenness of his breathing. On your Instagram. I've had 4 cousins text me asking why you're in the mountains while we're sitting here in an empty house. Do you have any idea how that looks? It looks like I am exactly where I was invited to be. Dad, elsewhere. We had to cancel the dinner. Sienna. The words were heavy, laden with a forced guilt. The catering company called yesterday afternoon. They said the credit card on file your card was declined for the final balance. They wouldn't release the delivery without the remaining $3,400. We assumed you were handling the holiday expenses as usual. I closed my eyes. I had disabled that specific secondary card on the 1st of December. I told you weeks ago I wasn't coming. I assumed you and Lucas would make your own arrangements once you decided I was an inconvenience. That doesn't mean you stop providing, Dad snapped. Then, I heard the fumbling of the phone. Lucas's voice came through, muffled but sharp. Put her on speaker. I want to hear this. A click, and then the room on their end opened up. I could hear the hollow echo of my parents' kitchen, a room I had effectively bought and paid for. Sienna, Lucas said, his tone shifting into that condescending big brother register. This didn't have to blow up. Harper is in tears. My fiancé's first Christmas with this family, and there's no food and the bank is sending automated alerts to Dad's email about the mortgage. The mortgage I asked, though I already knew the answer. An automated notice hit Dad's inbox at midnight. Lucas continued. Something about a failed electronic transfer for the December cycle. It says the grace period ends in 5 days. You turned off the autopay. I stepped back into the suite and shut the balcony door, cutting off the sound of the wind. Over the last 6 years, I have transferred $466,160 into that house and your various consulting failures. I have covered the property taxes, the insurance, and 100% of the maintenance. I have even funded the $42,000 down payment on your condo. Lucas. The silence on the other end was absolute. I could almost see them staring at the phone on the table. That number is impossible, Dad stammered. It is precise, I countered. And that recorded lien I filed in 2018. It wasn't just paperwork. It was a legal anchor. I hold a 65% equitable interest in that property. You told me Christmas wasn't about whoever writes the checks. Dad. So, I stopped writing them. I'm simply honoring your boundary. You're choosing a ledger over your family. Harper's voice piped up from the background, thin and accusing. No, I replied calmly. I am choosing to stop being a ghostwriter for a lifestyle you can't afford. You have 120 days under the notice of financial disengagement I sent to your attorneys. Refinance the debt into your own name, or we list the house. My interest is secured. You'd let your father lose his home, Dad asked, his voice finally breaking. You lost the home the moment you decided I was only welcome there as a benefactor, not a daughter. I said. The silence that followed wasn't an ending. It was a reckoning. I didn't hang up. I waited for them to find the words to fill the hole my money used to plug. They didn't find any. The first official missed payment cycle hit in early January like a physical weight. I didn't have to go looking for the data. Mark, my attorney, forwarded the automated notification from the lender that same afternoon. Payment not received for the December cycle. He read aloud over the phone, his voice steady and clinical. The 10-day grace period has expired. A late fee of $139 has been assessed, and the file has been flagged for pre-foreclosure monitoring. Okay, I said, looking out at the Scottsdale sunset. You're not reacting, he noted. There's nothing to react to. Mark, it's just math now. He paused. They've reached out to my office. Your father attempted to apply for a traditional refinance to pay you out, but the bank denied the application. They won't touch a new loan while my 65% equity line is still recorded. He's stuck. Dad had left 2 voicemails that morning. The first one was a jagged burst of anger, accusing me of sabotaging his credit. The second was smaller, sounding like a man who had finally stopped fighting the tide. Your mother's worried, he'd said. The bank mentioned default and acceleration. You don't understand how this feels. Sienna, to have a stranger talk to you about your own front door. I did understand. I was the one who had kept those strangers away for 6 years. I just wasn't stepping in to play the hero this time. Lucas called that evening while I was rinsing dishes. The lender is talking about reporting the delinquency to the credit bureaus, he started, his voice cracking. Harper is freaking out. The wedding venue requires a final credit verification before the 90-day mark. If Dad's credit tanks because of this house, our contract is at risk. I'm not a party to your wedding contract. Lucas, you could fix this with one wire transfer, he pleaded. I could, but that would be a gift, and we're done with gifts. A few days later, Dad called again. The fire was gone. The bank sent a formal notice of intent to foreclose. He whispered, They said if we don't bring it current in 30 days, they'll start the legal proceedings. They have to send that. Dad, it's procedural. You have a choice refinance by showing the bank a path to equity, or we list the property together. I've already authorized Mark to release the lien, but only at the closing table. Once my investment is returned. His breathing was shallow. You've put us in a corner. No, I corrected him gently. I just stopped building a floor for you to stand on. You have to decide if the house is worth more than the family you pushed out of it. We may have to sell, he admitted finally. That is an option, I said. We sat in the silence together for a long time, the only sound being the distant hum of a world moving on without us. Dad didn't call to argue this time. He called to say, We are meeting with a real estate agent tomorrow. I was sitting at my desk in Scottsdale between 2 showings. Good, I said, keeping my voice professional. It is someone local, he continued. Recommended by the bank's loss mitigation department. I will need to coordinate the payoff numbers. I added, My recorded lien must be accounted for in the preliminary escrow instructions. Send whatever paperwork they need, he muttered. 2 weeks later, a text arrived with a photo of the yard sign. For sale. The house behind the white post looked smaller than I remembered. Lucas called that evening, his voice heavy. They've already had 3 showings today, he told me. It is weird seeing strangers walk through our childhood home. It is a strong market. Lucas, the inventory is low. You are handling this like a cold transaction. It is a transaction, I replied. It stopped being a home for me a long time ago. The offer came in within 4 days, full price, with a 30-day close. On the day of the final signing, Mark, my attorney, looped me into the digital settlement statement. The numbers were laid out with clinical precision: the sale price, the mortgage payoff, and the prorated taxes. Before the final approval, I instructed Mark to reduce my lien payout by 12%. You are sure? Sienna Mark asked. That is a significant amount of liquidity to leave on the table. Yes, that 12% ensures they walk away with enough seed money to rent a comfortable apartment. I want a clean exit, not a total ruin. When Dad called after the closing, He sounded like a man who had finally put down a heavy burden. "It is done," he said quietly. "We are moving into an apartment near Lucas." "That makes sense," I said. "You did not have to reduce what you were owed by 12%. I did it for me." "Dad." "So I could walk away without looking back." "I never thought you would actually enforce the lien," he admitted. "I told you I would." I said. For the first time in years, the math was settled. There were no more debts to cover, no more roles to play, and nothing left tied to my name in Ohio. A year later, Christmas felt smaller, not sad, just quieter. I hosted dinner at my place in Scottsdale. Nothing dramatic. 4 people. My Aunt Teresa flew in, 2 friends from work who didn't ask questions about Ohio. We ordered catering instead of cooking. I didn't need to prove anything. At one point, Teresa stood beside me at the counter, handing me a plate. "You look different," she observed gently. "Different how?" "Lighter." I thought about that. Maybe. After everyone left, I rinsed the last glass and turned off the kitchen lights. The house felt still in a way I wasn't used to. No tension humming underneath. No calendar reminder about mortgage drafts. No mental note about someone else's overdue bill. My phone buzzed around 10. "Dad." I stared at the screen a second before opening it. "Merry Christmas. I hope you're warm." That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just that. I leaned back against the couch and typed slowly. "I am. I hope you are too." He didn't respond right away. That was fine. I used to measure my value in transfers, in solved problems, in how quickly I could stabilize someone else's crisis. I thought being practical meant absorbing impact so no one else had to. Somewhere in the middle of all that, I stopped noticing how often I was shrinking to fit inside other people's comfort. What changed wasn't the money. It was the silence after I stopped sending it. I learned I could sit in that silence and not rush to fill it. That's the part that feels different now. Not victorious, not angry, just steady. Sienna Morales no longer owns a house in Ohio. She no longer carries a recorded lien tied to family obligation. What she carries instead is something quieter, the understanding that her presence does not have to be purchased. If this story stayed with you, that's enough.